Okay, but Casey, as soon as you create a progressive tax system for it, you know exactly what's going to happen. The big church, Lifeway or whatever, is going to create a bunch of subsidiary charities that handle a bunch of important work, and then it's going to make donations to
Well,
those charities, write it all off, and pay no taxes. That's
they
100% what would
already
happen.
do that. It's
It's
just it's
true.
not for tax aversion. It's for risk management when they get accused of pedophilia, which is funny and true.
It turns
Yeah,
out
True
our
Hill song.
it turns out the way that we constructed to protect the child touchers also works for the federal government.
Oh, diversification, it's the Swiss Army knife of avoiding things.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
I'm Casey.
I'm Jeremiah.
And before we get into anything at all, I want to congratulate you, Casey. Because this week, everyone, Casey sent me music. He sent me a song, and I liked it. It was...
Like a song he wrote?
No, just a song. I get stressed.
Okay.
He sends music a lot, and I feel bad because I don't always love it. And
I used to send music a lot. Now I start typing the message, and then I'm like,
I feel guilty every time. I'm like, if I listen to this, I'm gonna have to tell him how I really feel about it. But I clicked on it. I listened to it, and I don't even remember the name of what was the name of the band?
Oh,
I
well,
can't even remember.
one of them was 1056.
Well, it was a song featuring 1056.
Landmarks.
I listened to that whole album.
Of an A.
Yep, like churches.
Yes.
Why
exactly.
are people doing that? Is it because the other names are taken, so they just flip the V, like flip the U into a V?
I think there's a good possibility that is a definite motivating factor.
It's just a trademark avoidance.
It's just got a little edge to it. Can't explain why.
It worked for churches, so I'm gonna do it too. Can we be what is it? GVC? Should we start doing that?
Yeah, we could give it a shot. I mean, you're likely to misspell it whenever you type it out anyways.
Crowing Vup Christian.
Vup is a weird word. I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know.
Sounds like that's slang for something.
Yeah.
Like a flabby body part.
But yeah, I don't know. I was you got me, Casey. Well, then I did listen to, you were specifically talking about 1056. I did go listen to some of their stuff, and they have a lot of singles. They don't have, there's not like any real like full albums out yet. Their singles were hit or miss, but they were.
I feel like singles are kind of that's the name of the game now.
It's weird.
Like, put out a single, promote the crap out of it, and then like a month from now you can put out another one, and you keep your name in the headlines.
Yeah, it seems like it's normal to put out like 5 or 6 songs before the album comes out. I think The Devil Wears Prada's newest album is coming out tonight, and I think they've released 5 singles to this point, and it has been over like the last 4 months.
That's what Dance Gavin Dance did too with their new album. It was like 5 singles over 5. And I personally don't like that because I'll check out the single, but a lot of times I hear a single and I'm like, that was good. But sometimes not hearing songs within the context of an album, it just like, you'll find the songs in an album that pop off where you're like, oh, that's a fucking banger. But like, sometimes I'll hear singles and think that was fine, and I don't think too much of it. But then when I sit and listen to the album and like soak in that experience, I'm like, holy shit, everything on this that I kind of wrote off before is actually really good. And I think even Dance Gavin Dance's new album is an example of that. Well, you guys actually have different feelings on that album than I do. Not that this is an album review episode, but that was one where at first I was like, nah, I don't know, because I kind of like the idea of them being heavier. And this album wasn't very, I don't think it was very heavy. And then once I get ideas out of my head of what albums should be, like there's so many albums that I've been like, that was okay. And then the second time I listened to it, like a month later, I'm like, holy shit, that's actually really good.
I just don't think I like Dance. Like, I don't know. I listened to the album 2 or 3 times. I think I only like whatever that song is that I keep forgetting the name of. I think I only like the one song because I remember when they opened for Under
Unreal.
Oath, I didn't really enjoy them. I don't know why. Like I'll hear snippets of songs that they'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's good." I don't think I enjoy them overall. They're
That's
talented.
yeah.
I don't know
That's
if
just
I've really listened to it. I
It's
listened
hard
to
for
it
me
when
to
you were
accept
here,
that.
I think.
yeah. We threw it on. We probably listened to like 4 or 5 songs on it.
Oh,
But
you're listening to them during the problematic era, huh? Interesting.
the problematic era.
Oh, you don't know
Oh,
about
yeah,
yeah.
that?
they got some drama going
No,
on.
no.
don't
Yeah.
they?
Oh, yeah, I'm aware. Oh, yeah, we probably
Okay,
shouldn't
okay.
be. I shouldn't be admitting that I really like their new album. Now, to be clear, they made it, and they were like, Tillian's not going on tour with them. I did find the original. I didn't know a ton about it, but I did find the original complaints and conversation about that. They originated on Reddit and their
Mhm.
fan page on Reddit, and ugh. sometimes you hear those and you go, it was vague. It was spoken about with a lot of like vagueness, so I didn't really know what was going on. And it's not. It's bad. I mean, it's not. It's bad.
I've got a story for that. So this was, I think, early 2020. You never have those days where like your Spotify recommended just gives you like an amazing song, and then you check out the artist and you like everything that you listen to by them, but you never heard anything from them.
Yes.
So this I don't know if you guys will know the band, but this one band pops up on there, and I listened to one song. I'm like, oh wow, that's
You're not
really
going to
good.
say the name of the band?
Oh no, I will.
Okay. You're building to it. Sorry.
He's building the intensity.
I don't know if it'll be that intense, but they have a song that Tillian guests on. And I listened to their first album and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Or like their most recent one. And then I went back to the album before that and it was also amazing. And it's just, I went down the rabbit hole of like, how have I never heard of this band? This is incredible. I listened to both albums like twice in that morning. I was like, let me go check out their Instagram. Bring up their Instagram 2 weeks ago. It's just like a black square with white text that says, I, the Mighty, will be on hiatus due to the recent allegations against da 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 da.
No.
And
no.
so now my wife refers to him as, is that the rapist band?
Oh God.
And I was like,
It is.
I'm like, it is, unfortunately, because like that was my first introduction to them, and it's really good. It's so good. I still listen to them.
Dude, it sucks that like vocalists get to tank bands. And it's not
Yep, and
fair.
it's always the vocalist. I mean, to
It
be fair,
is.
like you're never going to hear about a bass player getting canceled.
Well, because they're just like, hey guys, we got a new bass player, and everyone's like, what?
They just,
Why are you
the
announcing
bass
this?
player never successfully leveraged his position into sex. Not even like in a unseemly way.
Like,
Right, he
they're-
gets it. He's like, yeah, I'm the bass player. No one's looking for that.
yeah. Well, and the fans are just like, oh, we thought you guys just like picked someone for just to do the tour. Like,
He's the
oh, you
third
have a
best-
bass player in your band? Oh,
It just
my
means he's the third best guitar player.
God. Just kidding. No disrespect to bass players.
I love bass players the most.
The reason I played bass the couple times that I did was like because they needed a bass player. And I'm like, it's like a guitar. How hard could it be? I'm
No,
willing
but
to lower myself.
it is-
Exactly how I started.
Like a lead guitarist, I think could tank a band. Because that changes the sound of the band afterwards, but nothing like a vocalist having sexual assault allegations thrown at
With
them and be
underage
like,
girls, it's always
we
like
can't
just-
listen to this
Oh,
anymore.
God.
Like, and you can't go back and listen to it. Like if you listen to a
Eh.
band and like the guitarist had some shit happen and they found a new one and they carried on, I feel like people care less or make a big deal about you hearing their old music. It's like it is the vocals that make people.
I don't know. I must separate the art from the artist person in most cases, not R. Kelly. Like there's got to be a line.
It's a line.
Right.
Oh, so where's Bill Cosby is your line?
No, I think it's probably before him, I hope. But yeah, a band with allegations, allegations, no conviction, no hard evidence. I'm like, the albums still slap, I'm not giving them any money. They're gone. They even have like the end year on the Instagram. It's not even like an indefinite hiatus. Now it's like the band is completely done.
You just
So-
have to download their music through LimeWire and make sure they don't get any money for it.
Oh, well,
Well, luckily
listen-
musicians don't make any money.
yeah, I
off
would say
the
listening on
plays anymore.
Spotify rounds to $0. So I don't feel bad.
That's
Yeah.
Spotify's form of advocacy.
That all goes to their publicist for having to like handle that situation for the past year and a half.
Oh, that would be
Like,
amazing if Spotify would like put a banner on the artist page. It's like
it's,
due to the recent whatever, we're donating the 0.00004 cents
oh
from
my
the
god.
stream to a domestic violence foundation.
Yes, it'd be like all the COVID lines on podcasts where it's just like the COVID warnings if people talk about COVID. It's like do
Yeah.
that with bands that had allegations filed against them.
Warning,
Please
this
note
person's
this band had a
problematic.
sexual assault violation filed against them. It's like, okay.
Dude,
Uh,
Tim Dillon had this rant on one of his, it was one of the episodes of his show, but he was talking about how somebody needs to start a PR agency that just does like post-mortem rebrands of people who have been canceled, and like wait until after they die and then start the like reconstructing their public image and stuff. I thought that was hilarious and probably a valid business plan.
yeah.
Yeah, I could see that making some traction if you could play your cards right. How do you guys think Woody Allen will fare after he's dead?
Dude, I don't get the Woody Allen fascination, and maybe it's because I'm white trash that grew up in the middle of America. But like, I only know Woody Allen through the accusations. Like, I've
Casey's like,
never
it's
seen
not
any
like
of
it.
his movies.
It's not like if Dane Cook got canceled or something. Okay, like how much? Yeah, I don't know if I've ever watched any of his movies, or like I know some of his movies, but I haven't watched them, and I don't know if I've seen others that are his. But yeah, I only really know about him because people keep talking about what trash he is. Like, is he still a big deal anymore? Not that that
Uh,
absolves somebody of like past sins, but is anybody trying to make him a thing? Does anyone care about him?
I feel
The
like
people
people
who
do,
love
but
him do.
yeah.
Okay,
Like the people who love his work, especially like from people who are around in that era when he was kind of like the king of just, I don't know what you even is it like art house? Is that what you would call his movies? They
Maybe.
sound real I don't know. They sound like movies I wouldn't like.
yeah, they sound like A24 movies.
Yeah, I like those.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
if he's made any horror movies, maybe I like them. But no, I don't know. And I also think that like there's a part of his allure that is specific to people who have lived in New York.
Mm.
Because isn't that kind of like all of his movies are sort of framed in that New York
Are they? I
backsplash and
honestly, I
stuff?
don't know what I don't know what his movies are. I know if I was told, like, I would be like, oh yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let's look some
yeah.
up.
I
I
guess
looked
might as
them
well
up
Google it.
because April and I watched that documentary on HBO where they talked to his ex-wife and his kids, specifically like his daughter that had come forward about being molested by him. And I remember at that point, like, I don't even know what any of his movies are, and looking them up, and I had not even heard of like the vast majority of them.
I'm
Oh
sure I
yeah,
won't know the vast. I mean, what's the count on them, Jeremiah? If you have his IMDb,
57 director's credits.
Well, he
Okay,
did like one a year forever, I think.
I have seen one of them. I've seen Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
nope. Let's see if like a top 10 there. Is it? I don't
Yeah, I
know
mean
it's
some of the ones
organized.
he's known for. So,
Transformers 2.
Manhattan, Annie
Nope.
Hall,
Nope.
Hannah and her sisters. He
Nope.
was
Didn't
a
he direct one of the GI Joes?
he was a writer on all of those. Casey's trying to
He was a
give him a break.
consultant.
Okay, I'm trying to look for ones that like I might recognize to read to you, but I really don't know. I mean, Annie Hall, I've heard that name before. New York Stories, Crimes and Misdemeanors, Bullets Over Broadway,
And dude,
Wow.
like he plays like a
Match Point.
freaking
I've heard of Match Point.
pedophile in some of the movies that he's famous for. Like one of his first like real big ones, I don't know if this is his first, but one of the ones that people talk about loving so much is he's like a middle-aged man that's dating a 16-year-old.
Is that the one? Is that Match Point with Black Widow?
No, this is old. Like this
Okay.
is way back in the early part of his career. But yeah, that documentary, like I read some of the criticisms of it just because I knew they were out there. Uh,
Dude,
well, I
cinephiles
mean,
hate us right now.
I just don't get like why anybody. I mean, at some point, if you're gonna separate the art from the artist, or you're just gonna be a shill for Woody Allen, like just say that and stop being like, well, here's the problem with the story, and here's why this and that and the other. Like, just say I like his movies and I think he's funny, and I don't really care if he did horrible, terrible things.
You
Speaking
can't
of
say
Like,
that. That's
so
why
speaking of
people vote.
speaking of just like being on his side, on Wikipedia, there is not the normal section that's like controversies or personal life stuff. That isn't on his role, like
are
on
you
his page.
kidding me?
What?
You know, the
I'm
only thing that makes that happen is tons and tons of money. There's enough people that hate him for what he did that would be there. Somebody's been paid to not have that there.
I
Yeah,
wonder, is that something you
might be
can
right.
even do?
It's
I think you
supposed to
can
be.
do anything. Money is the superpower.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes,
what
but like,
can't money do
does Wikipedia actually allow that? Is what I was wondering.
for enough money? Allegedly.
Yeah.
No, they don't allow it, guys. They definitely would. It's funny because they're like every 6 months they have that banner at the top of Wikipedia. They're just begging
Yeah.
for money. Just all you have to do if in order to, they won't tell you this, but if in order to fund them fully for the year, you just have to like have like a dozen people add a controversial section to Woody Allen's Wikipedia page, and it gets that cleared up for you real quick. And Wikipedia is fully funded. It's magic.
Yeah. I remember I was reading a story the other day about somebody had mentioned on a podcast that Chelsea Handler had gone to dinner at Jeffrey Epstein's house. And
Okay.
I was like, what? Are you kidding me? So I looked up the video or article or whatever of her talking about it. And she did go to a dinner party at Epstein's house. And she sat next to Woody Allen and his wife. I can't remember what her name is. But she was his stepdaughter, and
Yeah.
Chelsea Handler like basically deflected the questions about it by being like, yeah, I sat next to Woody Allen and his wife, and I just like asked him how they met. Yeah,
Yikes.
I think I think I
Sure,
don't
has never heard
need to
that one
listen to
before.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder what his responses are. You know, he's had all of those questions. He just
He doesn't
to
give
Woody
him
be
Allen?
and stuff.
impervious to shame. I mean, it must be nice to be that impervious to shame, right?
Oh, well, he's definitely a psychopath. Like, there's plenty of stuff out there of him like having to deal with those questions, and he's not sorry, and he's
He
sticking
just
to
does
his
that
story.
motion where you do the peace sign and flick your tongue in between it every time he gets them.
That's pretty much what he does. Yeah, so I don't need to watch his movies. I think like I feel like with with the separating the art from the artist, I do get that like people like certain things because they represent like a period in their life or they were important to them at a given point, whether it's a movie or music or whatever else. And like I think for the most part, get what you need out of those things. But there's a difference between like I grew up with this movie and I like it, so I'm gonna just keep watching it when I feel like it or whatever. And like going online and publicly defaming his daughter who he supposedly molested. Like
Like why
Yeah,
why
a
would there
different
be
thing.
why would there be Woody Allen stands is what you're saying? Like what is there to defend? This really old creep.
Yeah.
And creep is
pretty
probably
much.
being too nice to him, but yeah, like why who cares at this point?
Yeah,
It's not
he
like
married his adopted daughter.
It's so gross.
does anyone
so
still
gross.
defend Roman Polanski? I know he was
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, people do.
Man.
They're like, well, the age of consent in France is blah blah blah.
If you have to start your defense with, well, the age of consent
Yeah.
is actually like, I mean, you might be technically in the clear, but you're not winning the moral
Yeah.
argument.
What are you running for Senate in Alabama?
Yeah. Oh my god.
So speaking of
Okay.
money solving a lot of problems.
Wait, no, I think Sam has a story to tell us, remember?
Oh yeah, you got like a Parks and Rec story that you need to tell.
Yes. Thank you for interceding on my behalf. Yeah, so this past week I went to a town meeting. Now, I've mentioned I live in a fairly small town, and my school district it's two towns. It's not a big school. Over the years, it's had a hard time when it comes to losing students to school choice. Is that a Massachusetts thing or a New England thing? Do you guys
No, I've heard of that.
school choice is an everywhere thing? Okay. So it's it's the number of students in the school has like fluctuated a good bit, but it's struggled. And they've had difficulties with certain sports teams having enough players because kids who want to be on teams that are doing better will school choice to other schools in the area, stuff like that.
Been there, done that, brother.
Yeah. So we have like so I went to this town meeting, and the only item on the agenda was to vote on a new school. It's like my school, well, the public school in my district is like it's basically set up into 3 wings, and the only thing they'd keep is wing A, which is like just the main building that has admin offices and an auditorium and cafeteria and stuff like that. So everything else that's in phases they're going to rebuild. And the town meeting is to vote on whether or not they want to go with the recommendation of the committee that was charged with sorting all of that out. Talking to the architect, having the consultants come in, and I'm gonna forget. I forget the acronym for the organization that basically it's a Massachusetts organization that refunds a good portion of what it costs to build the new building. So the total cost for the school is like 111 million.
Jeez.
And it's going to the 2 towns will be responsible for $64 million of that over a 30-year loan. And the presentation, just to, I guess, try to make this as quick as possible, is basically saying this building was built like 50 plus years ago. Like, it's old as fuck. It's falling apart. It's riddled with asbestos. The asbestos ceiling tiles are like constantly falling to the ground. Like, it's in rough shape. And apparently there's this whole, like, so they go, look, our options are build the new school for $64 million because we're getting like 48 million of that covered by this this group here. Or we can piecemeal this over however long we're allowed to for $66 million. Do you see where the math is going? It's not piecemeal. We're talking repairs. We're talking asbestos abatement. We're talking making it accessible to people who are in a wheelchair. We're talking like very basic things in order to make it, and the things that they have to do to like the requirements that they have to meet for the building are, if they don't, the school loses accreditation. So they're on probation for accreditation probation. And if they do not make, there's 22 things that they have to do to this building in order to get it up to par to be taken off probation.
You're doing a really good job of setting this up to be, there's only one logical option that an insane person could be interested in. So I'm really excited to hear how it's
only
not
one logical person that was opposed to that logical option.
So yeah. So yeah, like you said, it's obviously very clear which direction this should go in. We're about to lose accreditation. If you do the whole, like, let's just do repairs, apparently there are these laws that basically say once you start getting to the point where you have to repair 30% of the building's value, well, then you trigger other things. Like, you don't get grandfathered in under old code.
It's totaled or something?
Essentially, it's like you don't get grandfathered in under old code. So now you're repairing 30% of, you're spending, the repairs are going to cost 30% of this property's value. Well, now you need a new sprinkler system to get it up to code.
Oh, I see. So you're no longer just repairing an old thing. Now you're kind of making a new thing.
So doing this $66 million version of it, you could run into problems that are going to very speedily up that cost that you're unaware of until you actually get in and do it. So we have this whole meeting. It goes by pretty quick. I'm like, oh, dude, slam fucking dunk. We're going to vote. We're going to be out of here in 2 seconds. And they go, does anybody have questions about the presentation? And like 15
the
hands.
Pocket Constitution raises his hand.
At least like 15 hands shoot up. And
is that your first hint? You're like, uh-oh.
Yes. I'm like, Jesus Christ. And it's like, I mean, the initial questions are all about like, just not the the company or the organization that's funding, that's helping us, the towns, pay for the school. It's like they cover 70% up to a certain amount. So there, I for whatever reason, it makes sense to break out the cost that way. So the first questions are all about. I thought you said they were covering 70% of the cost of this building. Then how come we have to pay $64 million and they're only paying 48? That's not 70%. Like, yeah, that's because we know that's not 70%. That's not what they said. So it's just these, generally smart people like architects and city planners and shit like that trying to explain to these people how numbers work. And then it's like the guy who like facilitates the whole thing, he's like, let's make sure all the questions are related to this presentation. We are voting on whether or not we want to move forward with what the recommendation is here. Someone raises their hand. You said we're about to lose accreditation. Well, what have we done academically to keep accreditation? They're like, well, the principal's there. He's like, well, we've done a lot, and that's not really an issue here. And he ends up being forced into answering a question about accreditation before the guy steps back in and goes, let's keep the questions strictly related to the actual building presentation.
Like, I know the building's full of asbestos and is falling down, but have we tried juicing those test scores so that we don't have to fix anything for our kids? It's like, so then, what's that argument?
What if we flex sealed the whole roof?
So then they talk about like the people who school choice. The reason they're school choicing is because they want to go to better schools and schools that have more resources, a better academic environment. Like, do you want to go to this new school 15 minutes away, or do you want to go to this old shitty school that's falling into disrepair where you don't even have enough room or access to do your labs for science? Like, so then they end up just getting in this conversation about someone raised it, and it's not really a question. She's just like, I know for a fact people aren't school choicing out just because of the building. What? I mean, there's other reasons kids want a school choice out. What are those? Why aren't you talking about them? Like, they want to make it a conspiracy theory. And the principal's just like, look, yeah, of course, like there's plenty of other reasons that people will. Every family has their own reasons for wanting to send their kid to a different school, and you can't. And then someone else raises and they're like, well, have we tried talking to all of these families and seeing what the reasons are, and then coming up with a list of reasons?
It's like, I'm an architect. I'm an architect. I wish I was staring at a protractor right now instead of you.
I wish I was sticking that protractor through my eyeballs right now and into my ear socket. And then some old guy is just like, we have given everything that's going on, the world we live in now with everything being so crazy. What about school safety? What about school
someone starts going that direction, you're like, oh, this is about to get dicey. Like, are we losing our accreditation because of critical race theory?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not. What did he ask? What about school what?
School safety. It's like, what if a shooter walks into the school? It's like, what if? You know what happens when a shooter walks into a school? The same fucking thing we've seen everywhere else in the country. A lot of people die.
Bullets generate asbestos dust in this building.
If a guy's in the school with a gun, we have a problem. But the principal gave a great answer to it. I mean, he was just like, look, I think we have a safe school. But when it comes to like the basics of what constitutes a safe school, that has to do with increased exits. And he gave, I'm impressed, dude. Everyone who was up there given the answers gave fantastic responses and kept their collective. Because I would have been like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you stupid? Yo, you're one of the stupid ones who lives in this town. That's okay.
But, dude, they probably drill for it beforehand. They're like back in the back reading cue cards, listening to Eye of the Tiger. Just like
to close it out so I don't last on this for too long. My favorite part was orchestrating how we were going to vote took about 15 minutes. So you walk in and they give you a yes and a no. Like you can hold up a green Y and a red N. And then they also give you one like a white piece of paper that you can check off yes or no. So the guy who orchestrates the moderator for this thing is like trying to figure out how should we do this vote? And the tradition in the town, and it's pretty normal for small towns, is a vote by voice.
Mhm.
Yes or no. And if it's split and it's hard to tell, then you can do like you either do the written vote or you hold up the cards. And it took 15 minutes to figure out what we were going to do, despite everyone being quite clear that they just wanted to do the cards. And then people, well, why don't we do the cards? And then if it's too hard to count, we can do the one where you write it down and submit it. And they're like, well, you can't actually do that. That is against the bylaws. But we could do the voice one, and then we can do either a written one or the yes or no vote. And it just went on in circles. And then when they finally settled on the voice vote, some guy yells from the back, well, what about the unregistered voters here? We can't let their voices count. And this
It sounds like the worst. This is the worst way to spend a Wednesday.
Yeah, and it's very clear. Like very quickly, we know who the 22,000 mules guy is, right? It's he fully buys into the election fraud, stop the steal nonsense. If he's concerned about two people from out of town sneaking in to pass a vote that passed with flying fucking colors.
The unregistered voters, Biden sending them in to get a school vote.
Yep.
It just the epitome of small town politics. It felt like an episode of Parks and Rec where they do those town hall meetings where people ask stupid questions and you don't know how to respond to it. But
There's
after
definitely got to be so many situations in those meetings now where like if you look around in the crowd, you can see some dude like handing his phone to his wife, like hit record,
yeah.
Like so much of that, like I'm gonna be a TikTok star.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna own the groomers. Did anyone bring up grooming? Because that's
no,
the latest.
no grooming.
Okay.
But it was funny. So we finally ended up, because of that guy's freak out, we're like, we could do, who cares? Like, there's not enough people here who are unregistered. And the guy's screaming in the back, you can't do that. It's a vote. The votes matter. It's like, shut the fuck up, dude. So then they do try to do the yes and no ones where you hold up the cards, not the written one. And they go all in favor, a sea of green, which was great, but also frustrating because everyone who held up the green, yes, were the people who kept that meeting going for an extra 45 minutes with their stupid questions.
Of course.
You knew where you were going to vote. You just wanted your voice to be heard and a question to be asked that didn't matter, that was clearly explained in a well thought out and articulated presentation. And then when it comes to the no's, I think some people didn't put their hands up because they didn't want to be outed as the few people who voted against the children here. But they were, I saw two. I saw two go up. From my vantage point, and
brave souls.
It's like, we did this
standing in the storm
I know, and there was like up with like that grimace on their face, like I'm standing for freedom.
Like, you don't even have kids here.
That's
have a lot of feelings.
People. So the biggest issue is like if your taxes will go up for the next 30 years, $216 a year per $100,000 of value on your home.
For how many years?
For 30 years.
Okay, so forever. They're never going to get that money back.
Well, there's this one old guy who asked that question. It was like a very elderly man. They gave him the answer. He goes, oh, that's fine. I'm not going to live that long anyway.
It's a boss move.
I don't know, man. The whole thing was wild. And I think what's like one of the other things that stuck out to me was like, other than the cost, I mean, the cost is what people would have had a problem with, but what was infuriating is this is the third time they've tried to build a new school. And 10 years ago, they shut it down, and it would have cost less than half the amount.
A fraction.
They showed this graph. They're like, this is what it looks like. And it's like a slightly ascending line. In the past 7 years, for the cost of building just jumps completely to double. And they're like, look, if you don't do this, you're going to spend more money putting Band-Aids on stuff and still potentially losing accreditation. And then you're eventually going to have to do this anyway. After spending $66 million, you will still need a new building. And at that point, it's going to increase exponentially. It's not a steady rate that the cost of this goes up. It's going up beyond inflation. It's going to go up. If you did it 10 years ago, it would have been less than half the cost, and you we wouldn't be having to look at a $66 million Band-Aid or a brand new. So it's just like all of the numbers stack and people still can't fucking get it. And that's when you realize democracy is stupid. It's so dumb.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, I don't
democracy,
love
if
the
it wasn't
idea.
for all the pricks who become dictators, like, that's obviously a better way to govern. It's a more efficient way. Like,
And I don't love the idea of being like, well, let's take these smart people and put them in a room to make the decisions because they're just going to get rich off them when they don't affect the public. Like, basically, there's no good way to govern. Everything's shit, and we all have to fucking deal with it. That's what I learned this week.
We're a people too stupid to be governed at this point. That's what it comes down to. We're too dumb to be governed.
Oh my god.
So,
That's it.
We've been talking about this topic for a while, and it's something that it's a hot button issue that is always kind of in circulation.
Yeah, it
and that
floats back
is
and forth with scandals, particularly a new scandal comes in or someone makes unconscionable amount of money off of something, and
a pastor gets robbed at the pulpit out of like $6 million worth of jewelry.
Yep.
But
And
the issue we're talking about is whether or not to tax churches.
yes, it's always, here's what happened that's really dumb to this rich pastor, or from or through or because of this rich pastor. Hashtag tax the churches. And those usually go off and get a lot of comments. And there's a lot of numbers that get thrown around that's like, if we tax the churches, that'd be enough to provide such and such a service for everyone forever. I don't know. Just, you see numbers and ideas get thrown around a lot. And every time I see that, I've never really looked at the numbers, but we decided to just take a look at it and kind of dive into what our thoughts on that are, because, well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like a lot of churches are out there truly doing good work that shouldn't, that I love the idea that they don't have to, I don't know, contribute.
Basically, if a church, if you know its name, it's not doing good work. That's more or less what it comes down to.
Yeah.
If they have a publicity service and social media, consultants, they're probably not doing great work.
Right, all the good works are coming from like First Methodist of Afton, where 3 ladies named Gertrude are like feeding a bunch of needy families every Saturday, like just hold it down.
Yeah. Exactly. They have their local food pantry that feeds 1,000 families a month or something like that.
Yeah, this is a sticky issue, and it's one that like it's so split, because I mean we all know what the knee jerk Twitter reaction is, especially from the atheist, evangelical communities, people like that.
The more hurt you are by the church, the more you want it to pay for stuff, I think is how it goes.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty clear that like most people when posed that question are going to be like, yes, absolutely. But it's a lot more complicated than it seems. And I think like if you grew up in the church, you probably heard different arguments on this all the way along. I know like the one that I always heard from people was like, well, people, that's their hard-earned money that they're donating, and they've already paid taxes on it and stuff, and they want it to go to the church. And I used to think like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But then, I had an epiphany, and I'm like, well, everybody's writing off all these donations anyway, so they're really not paying taxes on that money that's going to the churches. So there's a lot of weird arguments that when you start thinking about them don't really make a ton of sense. I think the thing that you have to keep in mind through all of this is like the obscene amount of money that we're talking about when it comes to some of these churches. Legislation that got passed in this regard will affect churches of all sizes, right? That's the other thing you got to weigh against it. But just to give you an idea, I found an article on Fox Business where they were talking about, churches obviously are a weird segment of nonprofits that don't really have to report their financial standing and dealings and where their money goes and how much of it comes in. But there was I don't know what you would call this, like a group or an organization called the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability, or the ECFA, and they're basically pushing churches to disclose where their money's at, how much is coming in, and it's an attempt by an evangelical group to create some transparency and accountability for some of these churches. And some churches have like elected to do that at different times. Okay, so the one that was kind of striking to me is Life Church. Have you heard of them?
It's a super generic sounding name.
Life, Life Way,
Right.
Life Song, Song of Life, Life of Life, Life is
Life of
Saved.
Pi.
Yeah, yeah.
New Golden Emperor Buffet.
The Super China Buffet.
Yeah, so Life Church is not far from me. They're based in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is it's just north of Oklahoma City, but they have 40 campuses, I think it said, across the US.
Oh,
So
wow.
they reported their 2018 numbers to this organization. And basically they brought in $143.4 million in cash and non-cash donations in 2018 and reported $281 million in total assets. That was
Wow.
like the craziest numbers. And then the next one down was Lakewood Church, which is Joel Osteen's church.
Yep.
Our favorite animatronic nutcracker.
Our favorite hypocrite.
So his church, they reported their 2017 numbers. They received a total of $78.7 million in contributions. They have a $90.6 million annual budget, and they had $59 million in net assets at the end of 2017.
Now, what's interesting about Osteen's church, and maybe you were going to get into this, is Osteen doesn't take a salary from the church.
Which is big of him.
I know.
It's real Trumpian.
I think he's a very humble man.
He just makes all of his money from the books that he's able to sell tons of because of the platform he has because of his church.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
It's like when people like brag about the fact that Trump didn't take a salary or some politician
While
isn't drawing a salary.
while the taxpayer paid how many millions of dollars for him to go play golf? They paid the money to his golf courses for him to go play golf.
Saudi ambassadors are staying at his hotels for like 200 grand a night.
Yeah, but thankfully he didn't take that 400 grand from the government. Thanks, man.
Yeah. He's not even drawing a salary. President Bush, he didn't even take a salary. It's like, yeah, well, he's still collecting on like 200 years of blood money that his family made by, I don't know, grinding Asian immigrants into railroad ties. But, that's cool. That's nice of him.
Not to mention how much I'm curious to see how much tax dollars have now at this point gone to all of the what's the word I'm looking for? Like all the lawsuits or whatever it is that Trump's been held up in court for. Like he's been sued multiple times. He's constantly in and out of court. It's like the amount of government resources that have gone to dealing with his shitty business tactics is unbelievable. It's like, it's super cool you didn't take that $400,000. You spent that on litigation in 24 hours.
Yeah. And that's what's hard about this issue too, is that it's inseparable from politics. And, we always talk about that, about how like you really can't talk about church nowadays without getting into politics because they're so married together. They take every opportunity to like align themselves politically with different factions.
Right.
But I think that part of the reason why this is such a touchy subject and why it comes up so often is because of how gross the church's dealings with, our political system have become.
Right.
So
if they're weighing in on it and influencing people to vote one way or the other, it feels like they should lose their tax exempt status. And technically they should. That's a dicey line.
It's easy to say, but I think it's anytime someone's having like a real Twitter hot take, it's easy to have the feeling of there's an injustice and the injustice should be righted, and it should be righted by this way. But to tell if somebody's really thought through it, just start asking them specifics on, okay, how do you implement that? Because yes, should they lose their tax exempt status? Yes, probably. Should they be advocating directly for a political party while being a nonprofit? No. How do you realistically stop them doing it? Like, explain the legislation, explain the effect that'll have. Like, how well do you understand that? And that's when you start realizing that, like almost everything else, it's really complicated and it's not as easy as just going, like, yeah, these guys are dicks and they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Everyone agrees except those guys. But that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to actually do something about
Yeah. First suggestion: start 20 years ago.
it.
Yeah,
Start 40
right.
years ago.
Because they're what? They're all 501c3s or whatever, and they fall into the same category as any other nonprofit. I think it's okay. Well, one, it's important to get into the idea of what a nonprofit is, and it's literally just, as my understanding is, like, you're not beholden to shareholders. Like, if you have shareholders, your goal is to turn a profit to fund your shareholders. Like, it's not, no one, you have no vested in, like, there people aren't investing in your organization, or like on paper, right? You don't have like a
I think
it,
it's just a different structure for an organization.
like, if
And
you have shareholders, you can't be like, we're a nonprofit even though people are profiting off of us. Like, the idea is that the money goes into salaries, the money doesn't go to people who are investing in your company in order to grow it and make money off of it. You are not an investment to be returned on. You are there to exist for the sake of your money staying either, one, within your organization to a degree, but also, eh, like, it's not like you can't have income, right? You can have that money sitting in the bank. You can save up for your building fund, but that's still going back into the organization in some way. Like, it's just that there aren't, you're not going to be publicly traded. People can't invest in that way. Like, but it is simple to become one. Like, anyone can say, any people can say that. I think what the problem is when it comes to saying we're a not for profit is like, what that means on paper versus what that looks like can be different things, because people can profit off of not for profits, and they do all the time, and they raise their salaries and they make great money, and, like, I don't know, like, so even going back to Osteen, right? Like, he's got a beautiful house. Like, there's, within churches and houses of worship, are one of the few institutions that, or the only institution that benefit from this concept of a parsonage, which allows you to deduct, like, it's tax deductible income for your living arrangements or something like that. I forget how the specifics work, but it is specific to houses of worship, but it only works within a moderate amount. Like, Joel Osteen cannot say that his giant $3 million mansion or whatever is a parsonage and then get tax deductions on that. But I don't know. So then, but that does count as property, right? That the church owns. That's not for profit. So they're not paying property taxes on that either. So it does get convoluted. But the property tax, like, technically they owe property taxes on things that aren't directly related to the mission of their organization. So if that church owned, if that church owned a hall and they wanted to use that to put on shows and community events or something like that, that weren't directly related to the church's mission, but they could end up in a situation where they have to pay property taxes on that building because it's not related to the work that they're doing.
I
I
think
don't know.
I don't know that there's really distinctive lines there. I think it's just like if you're filing as a 501c3, like property that you own is naturally exempt from that. I think where the parsonage thing comes into play is that regardless of the fact that you're working for a nonprofit, like the salary and stuff like that you draw from that nonprofit is still considered personal income. So the parsonage exemption, I think, comes down to the individual level. Like, you know, I'm I'm renting this facility, and because it's directly, because it's owned by the
Yeah.
ministry, and then I can deduct that from my net income at the end of the year. Where all of this gets sticky too on the political side is there's a thing. It was President Johnson before he was president, but Lyndon Johnson championed this bill called the Johnson Amendment, which specifically outlined like the procedures for political involvement for nonprofit organizations. And there's a lot of reasons for it. But basically, what it states is that if you are structured as a nonprofit organization, like you can't directly endorse a political candidate, you can't do any sort of partisan fundraising or community outreach and stuff like that. Like everything that you do has to be nonpartisan and not connected to one specific party or person. And that's the thing that churches right now and the parts of the evangelical community are trying to overturn. Um, there's this movement called like Freedom Pulpit Sunday or something like that. It's basically like an organized push slash protest where they're encouraging pastors to speak directly from the pulpit, and endorse political candidates and specific party. Well, the
God,
Republican
that's
Party, not
bold.
parties.
Is it that, or is it? I might be thinking of a different one, but I thought it was Freedom Pulpit or something, where they're actually. I thought it was a step in the right direction. Of they want them to preach the values, but specifically not a candidate because they don't like that the Republican Party just assumes they have the evangelical vote now, and they can do whatever they want and get away with it. Now I
Isn't
doubt
that
they're going to
how
be.
they've gotten away with it? That's what I always heard. We don't
Yes,
preach. We don't tell you who to vote for, but you think we're not going to talk about our values?
right, exactly. But no, I mean, is that the same thing? Because the one I heard about, I thought was actually, oh, that's a step in the right direction. Now, will they actually do it that way? Who knows? But I was encouraged reading it. But it sounds like what you're saying. This is the direct opposite. This is a challenge to be like, we're going to talk about him. What are you going to do about it?
It's basically like they can't shoot us all. That's the
Yeah.
philosophy behind it.
And
Is
and
like,
if they try, then we're definitely going to go down as martyrs, baby. We know how to sell a martyr story.
right. They're basically challenging the federal government to do something about their infringement on the Johnson Amendment.
Remember,
I dare you to challenge my tax exempt status.
right. All the churches who were pretending like they were the underground church in China during mild COVID restrictions, where they were like, please don't gather in groups of 200 to cough in each other's faces. Or if you do it, just wear a mask. And they were like, this is what we've been telling you about for decades, that the persecution was coming.
Yep. Getting together for a no fear community fluid swap on Sundays. Challenge you to
Weird
come
way to
down
say
and
orgy,
just,
but okay.
say no to this infringement.
So, all right, what happens if you want to tax the church? Should we talk about that? Like, for the people who think like it's not that difficult, just tax the churches. Like, if they're going to talk about this anyway, just do it. Do we want to talk through what does it actually look like if you want to start taxing churches?
Yeah, take
I
it
want-
away.
I want to say before we do that, I want to ask you guys if you had any like gut reactions to this.
Yes, because when
And
you
at
said
the end we can talk about whether or not they like our minds were changed at all. But
I by default I was like, yeah, they should lose their tax exempt status when we talked about it. And I think you said something along the lines of like, I used to think that way, but like I read into it and I'm not so sure anymore. And I remember thinking like, that's weird. And it took 10 minutes of reading about it. And I was like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, even before I read anything about it, my gut reaction was no. Like, you don't have to like how this nonprofit handles its money and wields its influence, but that I get the Johnson Act, but it's like if they're not endorsing specific political candidates, they're just talking about their morals in a very forceful way. Like I see the gray area there, and to me this falls in this like that weird category of like free speech where you don't have to like what they say, but you do have to fucking deal with it a little bit. And I hate it. Like I do not like what they're saying, and it's actually like ruining the lives of people that I know, and it's hurting relationships constantly. It fucking sucks. But when you look at why you're allowed to be a nonprofit and why you don't tax that and why we afford nonprofits the luxury of non-taxable income, because the idea is taxing income, and the idea is that nonprofits don't technically have they're not generating income and taxable income in the way that you do. Where you're like, I have this income and the purpose is for me to do whatever the fuck I want with this money. And I don't know. So my gut reaction was it's something that people are donating to. And it feels like saying to me, I don't like that people can say that, therefore I don't want free speech anymore. And I think you'd be hurting a lot more than you'd be helping by trying to delineate what you
Right. It's
can.
people who are mad at the injustice. They're upset at the injustice. They want the injustice
Right.
to stop. And so they equate that in their mind. Like, I mean, I did to some degree of, well, there's an easy way to do this. Let's just fix the problem by take away their incentive.
And it makes a lot of assumptions about how all churches are functioning.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So my initial reaction was, no, we don't want to do that. Like, there's a lot of churches doing good work in their communities. I don't think we want to touch that. I do think, though, that like after reading further about the Johnson Amendment, I I do think that we need to hold on to that, and they need to start
Agreed.
enforcing it. I where you're totally right in that, like, enforcing that Johnson Amendment on churches for speaking public, from the pulpit about political candidates. Like, you, how are you ever going to police that? How are you ever going to stop it? But the danger in the Johnson Amendment going away, which there's like active lobbying and stuff. I mean, President Trump like tried his best to overrule it with an executive order, I think in like 2017. The danger there is not in that, oh, we're going to allow these pastors to preach about, how you need to vote Republican. The danger is that like churches could easily be, it's the financial side that's the danger of getting rid of the Johnson Amendment, because if that goes away, not only they can talk about political candidates, but they could also make direct contribution to campaigns.
Yes,
And
absolutely
that's
agree with that.
a real problem, especially when you consider the fact that like churches don't have to report any of the money that's coming in or going out or what they do with it. I mean, even just like we got 1 year's worth of numbers from these two mega churches that we looked at a second ago, and it's what, $300 million. It's a third of $1 billion. It's insane, right? And that basically, like, you want to talk about special interest
The
groups and
one
super
percenters
PACs.
of church.
Yeah, and like literally churches could just become like churches could easily become just like a money laundering scheme for political campaigns.
Absolutely.
So that's the first compelling argument that I read that I was like, oh, wait a second, this would be bad, is that exact thing. The churches that are the worst abusers of this, by and large, are going to be the ones with the most money and the most capacity to hire lawyers and awesome accountants to help them to get out of as much of their tax burden as possible. The people who will be hurt the most are the people without those resources, which are the smaller churches, which by and large are not problematic, at least on the national stage, right? When it comes to this stuff.
Right.
I'm sure, their pastors may talk about politics and stuff from the pulpit, but they're not engaged in the excessive lifestyle that a lot of larger churches are. So they'll get hurt by this too. And they don't have the resources to do something about it. And the rich churches will just stay rich by using those resources to dig their way out of it legally. So it's the same thing with the whole idea of
Likely.
like taxing the rich. It's easy to say, and then when you have to figure out the mechanics of how exactly are you going to do that, it's hard to wrestle that with like, well, they're good at retaining money. That's one of the reasons they have a lot of it, is they figured out how to have a lot of it. So
Yeah.
it's going to be really hard to collect.
Tax increases on the wealthy are sold using Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos and all of those people as examples, but who they actually end up hitting are, the local business owner in your town that has the steakhouse, or the guy that owns a couple of Jiffy Lubes or whatever. Like, those are the people that make enough money to get targeted by that legislation, but don't have enough money to where they can hide it overseas and things like that.
I don't know that that's completely true. And the way, like, because when you're talking about taxing the mega rich, like, well, I don't know. So I actually don't know what the amount is on. So what Biden did, the whole 15%, like a corporate tax. Like, if you're a corporation, you're
Corporate,
paying.
fine. No, corporate's a different thing. I think it's individual taxes is
Right.
more what I was
So
talking about.
I'd say I think most of the time when people are trying to sell tax the rich, I mean, the rich are often, they're not only paying less taxes than you, they're getting fucking subsidized by the government. And that's what's so fucking frustrating about all these conservatives acting like they hate welfare and that you shouldn't get a handout. And then you talk to them about corporate greed and they're like, well, they're employing a lot of people and they're doing a lot of good. And you're like, that's fine. If you want to believe that offering a lot of employment is doing a lot of good, despite the way that these employees are treated. I don't understand when you became the kind of person that thinks offering employment equals getting a handout. Like, good work doesn't merit free money. It never has in their life, and they've never believed in those statutes. So like, I always find that super frustrating, but it is it just seems like any time there's any talk about taxing the rich, it is truly just saying, if you make a shitload of money and you're filthy fucking rich, there are no loopholes. At the end of the day, no matter what, you have to pay X% in taxes. And
Yeah. Now enforce that with policy. That's
Right.
the whole point.
and get all the people whose campaigns are funded by them to vote for that. Of course, we know,
Right.
like what we just saw, the
Figure out the mechanics of it.
Democrats not vote to eliminate dark money from their primary campaigns. Like, they
just
don't.
figure out
Nobody wants that.
Figure out the mechanics of it. Like, what does it mean to make money? Well, for like somebody who has an average income, it means you get a W-2 or some 1099s, and this is the money that you made, and that's it. Like, you get a paycheck for doing the work. If you're somebody like Jeff Bezos, who probably takes a tiny salary of $50 or whatever, and you just own a bunch of stock, and then you get banks to give you like 0% loans against your stock as collateral, it's like, what does making money even mean anymore? Like, he's not making anything. Like,
Yeah.
He earned every goddamn cent of that, Jeremiah. How
but it's
dare
that
you?
type of thing of like, you can't outthink somebody at that level of like, oh yeah, but this is how we define income. They'll just figure out another way to get money to live off of. Like, it's not going to be that hard for them. They
Well,
have unlimited
no.
assets.
And we're way off topic here.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like,
Sorry.
part
we
of
do.
why that part of this thinking about this is what's part of what's brought me around to like, dude, we need the only thing I really care about the government doing in this regard right now is just like doing everything possible to allow people to unionize, because that is how you will get money out of these corporations. You get their employees unionized to where they can collectively bargain and stuff, and it's a literal gun to their head that they can't run from.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's the only way that you squeeze money out of it. And honestly, like, at that point, I would rather see that money go back into the pockets of normal people than funneled through government bureaucracy and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, put it in people's pockets. That money will make its way into the economy. Money's got to move. As long as money's moving, everybody's benefiting. It's when it's held tight in, corporate bank accounts and stuff like that nobody benefits from it.
Yeah. So back to churches.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jeremiah, before I asked us to give our gut take, what you were about to jump into.
Well, no, I think I kind of already did. It's the, if you want to tax them, what do the mechanics actually look like for that? And then how, if you are a richer church, you're gonna have a much easier time not paying those taxes if you owe them. But it won't just be churches. You can't make a law that says we're just going to tax which churches? Christian churches, Catholic, Mormon. Like, you're gonna have to tax all churches now. In order for that
if they're registered as a nonprofit, then you're dealing with that. I mean, as much
right.
as
So then, do you have new legislation that
that's
separates a faith-based nonprofit? So what's the difference between a faith-based nonprofit that does something that's obviously not a church versus a faith-based church that is nonprofit? Like, so then you're going to have to walk that back farther to a lot of nonprofits that are doing absolutely nothing political. Like, they might be a Christian organization technically, but they, like, Wycliffe Bible translators. Like, as far as I'm aware, they are not doing anything remotely political, and they're going to get hit by this too, because how are you going to draw the distinction between a bunch of people who call themselves missionaries who are doing work around the globe based on donation support for the Great Commission compared to a bunch of people donating money to a church that's preaching the Great Commission? Like, they're really, on paper, it's very hard to separate those two. And it
becomes problematic if you could separate those two, to say, look, anyone can be a nonprofit, but if you're a religious group of people, we are going to tax you.
But then that effectively means you're financially punishing people who proselytize their faith, which is the government absolutely infringing on their First Amendment rights.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
I agree. I mean, no argument for me on that. I don't think you can delineate it. I think the alternative, you either have nonprofits or you don't. and everyone pays taxes. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's how that works.
Well, there's the flat tax. No, sorry.
Yeah. I think we need to do the
Oh
full thing.
no!
Go to flattax.org.
Oh, this is the part where we cut to a commercial of Rudy Giuliani telling you to buy gold bars from his.
Or mypatriotsupply.com.
The problem with the American economy is it's not backed by gold, guys.
I'm America's mayor. And you know what I love is a good cigar and a chunk of gold.
Then he bites down on like a gold nickel or whatever.
You know what I miss?
Gold
The good
coin.
old days when I had a license to practice law and a shred of self-respect.
All of
Bunch
my
of fucking-
massage therapist hush money is paid in gold.
He's sitting there like panning for gold. Looks like a fucking prospector.
Oh, dude, he could pull off a prospector look.
Yeah,
for
he could.
sure. He
I'm
looks
just
like
thinking
he
old
looks like
school
the
I wanna see him in
barkeep in a
overalls.
western that dies. Like
I
the
wanna
guy
see
that
him-
parts his hair down the middle and wears the little round glasses and
Has
gets
like
shot
those
first.
metal rings around his arms, like around his sleeves for no reason.
Yeah, we need him shirtless in a pair of overalls that just barely doesn't cover his nipples.
Oh my god, he looks like that American Gothic painting.
With a little piece of straw in his mouth.
So anyway, churches.
So, okay, so here's the like some of the counter to that. I think what you could say is like, first off, could you have a progressive tax bracket for nonprofit organizations if you were to tax them?
Sure.
Because that's the other thing is like, yeah, I mean, we've already said it, but you don't want to punish tiny local churches because, lifechurch.gov or whatever is fun, making
.gov.
200 million a year or whatever.
Okay, but Casey, as soon as you create a progressive tax system for it, you know exactly what's going to happen. The big church, Lifeway or whatever, is going to create a bunch of subsidiary charities that handle a bunch of important work, and then it's going to make donations to
Well,
those charities, write it all off, and pay no taxes. That's
they
100% what would
already
happen.
do that. It's just
It's
it's
true.
not for tax aversion. It's for risk management when they get accused of pedophilia, which is funny and true.
It turns
Yeah,
out
True
our
Hill song.
the way that we constructed to protect the child touchers also works for the federal government.
Oh, diversification. It's the Swiss Army knife of avoiding things. Yeah. Okay. So that is
I don't
true,
even know if that
right?
means, like a progressive tax bracket, but then if you're looking at nonprofits that take in a shit ton of money, like that do, disaster relief, right? They're going to be hit pretty hard by a progressive tax bracket simply because they bring in a lot of money. But I don't know. So
Well,
what if you like?
Income is not the same though as assets. Like when they looked at those numbers,
getting a
and
ton
like
of
that's the thing is like if you're taking in money and then you're reinvesting it into your community,
But it's
then
still
by all means you don't pay taxes on that. It's just like a business. Like you have a write-off if you have a company car or something like that.
that's
But
essentially what a nonprofit is, right? I mean, if you're taking
yeah,
in
but
money
the
and
Red
reinvesting
Cross
it,
had people standing on corners with firemen's boots for 2 years after 9/11, and then come to find out like they just hoarded that money and collected interest on it.
right?
I'm
Okay, so
probably mixing up several stories.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one, but
Regardless
it's
of
disgusting.
regardless of whether or not that's true, and we'll say allegedly just to be safe, but
I'm on it.
I do what you're saying I think does make sense because what had crossed my mind was like, should you tax up to a certain amount what is just sitting in people's accounts? Like, look, weigh it against their assets and how much you might need if your donations diminished. Maybe weigh it against like 6, 8, 9 months worth of assets, and then say if you're just sitting there hoarding that money and that money is making you money, well, now that's taxable income. If you have any sort of, but I think that's how that works, right?
Well, it's the same thing. It works in like private businesses too. I mean,
Right.
like right now we're coming up on the end of the fiscal year, and like this is the time of year where my company sells a lot of equipment. Because if you're a guy who owns a car dealership or a repair shop and you're showing a big net positive on your account statement for the end of the year, then like
Right.
you buy equipment, you write that money off, and you lower your taxable income for the end of the
Right.
year. And I think you could essentially do some of the same things with nonprofits should you go that route. It's like, I mean, if Lakewood has $200 million sitting in an account, not benefiting their parishioners, their community, or anybody else, then like, could we tax that? I mean, and if they were to be taxed on those things, a lot more of that money would make its way out.
But then how do you justify that of like
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna.
they aren't allowed to have savings? They aren't allowed to prepare for future things. I have the answer on
They
the Red
can't
Cross thing, by the
prepare
way.
for the end times, Casey.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so you want to know what about the Red Cross in September 11th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a
Of
news article
course.
from CNN, November 6, 2001. So this happened like right after 9/11.
Fresh off the.
Yeah. So the Red Cross raised more than $564 million for the Liberty Fund, which was set up in response to the attacks. So the agency stated on its website is spending more than any other relief agency responding to the attacks. It has distributed only 154 million of the 564 million.
This is back when gas was 80 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
You
So
could buy a payday bar for a nickel.
Yep. And then apparently people are upset because they've been told enough money has been raised in this Liberty Fund that it's being closed, but 2/3 of that money is going to be given away to other Red Cross needs.
Is this where Bannon got the idea for We Build the Wall?
So president of the Red Cross, Dr. Bernadine Healy, was trying to defend the language of their stuff. They said, don't confuse us for the 9/11 fund in New York. Don't confuse us for Habitat for Humanity. Don't confuse us with the scholarship in New York for the victims. The Liberty Fund is a war fund, she said. It's involved into a war fund. We must have blood readiness. We must have the ability to help our troops if we go into a ground war. We must have the ability to help the victims of tomorrow. And it
What
goes
does that
back
mean?
and forth. But basically, she resigned at the end of it.
Okay.
She resigned at the end of that year, but it sounds like, I don't know about the firemen's boots themselves. But they raised a whole bunch of money
as she was climbing onto a private jet like Kenneth Copeland.
Right. they gave like a good chunk of that money. I mean, 164 million is not nothing. But
Sure.
the other 400 million does seem like it just went towards other Red Cross priorities that don't have to do with September 11th.
Yeah, look, I mean, let's be fair. The Red Cross had never raised money before this time, so they didn't have a war chest.
She actually says,
and they were learning. They were baby money raisers.
I think she says in the article, we had a war chest due to previous. It's kind of funny that you said that, Casey. I think she literally says that.
I'm fluent in the language of grift.
Yeah,
I want to find.
It's because you're a fucking salesman, dude.
That's right.
I don't expect. It was literally half the grift. Okay, did you guys come across, because you're talking some of these big churches pulling in 300 million. Did you guys come across any numbers of what has been assumed to have been taken in by churches on a yearly basis?
Nothing didn't seem like a total guess because of the difficulty of compiling. I didn't look super hard for that, though. I spent most of my research looking at secular arguments for and against taxing churches.
Secular.
I found one that you won't like.
Okay.
I found a couple.
On the subject of property, your mentor Bill Maher said that churches in the U.S. own almost $750 billion in property that they pay no property taxes on.
Yeah, I don't.
And then he followed that up with this really poignant statement: "We're being forced to subsidize a myth that we don't buy into." And then everybody said, "Shut up, Bill."
Oh, everyone clapped and cheered and said, "We love you, Bill Maher." Bill Maher is insufferable.
He is awful.
He's so fucking awful. All right. So as far as so I did find some numbers, but like you said, Jeremiah, there is some guesswork involved. But so I had that the 2019 church contributions were about $128.2 billion.
Oh boy.
Now, but that's not all tax, but that isn't all taxable. So like businesses' income isn't all taxable. So this, I found so let me tell you where I'm getting this from. Tax Foundation, .org and PolitiFact both had the same exact numbers. So I don't know if they were working off of a similar source or if they crunched these numbers independently, but $128.2 billion. And they said, look, of course there's money that's not being accounted for. So they said an aggressive number would be about $150 billion. But to assume the average taxable income of all of that would be they just aligned it with what the average is across the country. For corporations or businesses, it would be a 7.7% profit, which would only end up being at like $2.4 billion in taxes, which is like a drop in the bucket for it's like a 3 something trillion dollar taxable, like is how much is taken in taxes every year.
That's like 3 days worth of Ukrainian artillery bombardment.
Yeah. So all this conversation, I think it's worth talking about all this conversation about whether or not you should tax the churches, how you can do it. You do have to end up looking at the cost benefit analysis here, which is like, do you want to you're going to put fucking $2.4 billion into figuring out how to hold these cunts accountable. Oops. I think that's the first C word we've said on this show. Well, we can decide what we want to do with that.
Am I flush? I feel flush.
Anyway, I don't know, you guys, how you want to come back from that. Okay, well, so you're going to spend a lot more than that, kind
of. Do you always have that ready to go?
I do. It's my favorite one.
You pig.
Woo! All right. But yeah,
okay.
You are going to spend more than $2.4 billion with trying to get the IRS to figure out how to manage their bullshittery.
Right.
We have 75,000 new Gestapo agents.
87,000. And they're all armed.
Yes.
All of them.
Well, so are the churches, bitch. So get ready for war.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, there is that factor. I also think that like something that doesn't get a lot of discussion or traction nowadays is like, what is the cost to our what's the societal cost to pushing something like this through? I feel like nobody talks about that anymore on either side, but like, you might think that abortion is genocide. What's the societal cost for you pushing your ideas through on the entire population? Like, are you going to tear the country in half? I feel like that's something that you would definitely have to ask about taxing churches out of, when we have a history of not doing so. Is like, are we gonna weather this storm for the $2.4 billion worth of taxable, income and everything that you're talking about? I don't know.
It seems like a giant waste of time. And like you said, the social cost on that. Yeah, cool. 2.4 bill. That's not doing much. Even if it was more, like if you wanted to increase that, or you could increase that to a point where like it merited the conversation. I don't know. It's still hard for me to believe that it would ever be worth it. Unless it was like astronaut. Like if religion like some people believe it's one giant grift. I don't. I don't believe religion is one giant grift. I don't believe every church and institution is. I disagree with them on 98% of things, but that doesn't mean they're grifting. It means in most situations, out of all of those billions, most of these are. I mean, I've driven through Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. You just pass church after church after church after church, and they're no different than your community center. If you go to a small town community center, you're going to find 40 people who are like-minded that all have the same problems with the liberals or whatever. You go to an inner city and you meet in some rec center basement to talk about whatever it is that you're passionate about. You're going to have a problem with the people on the right. Like it's like-minded people finding each other. And when you think about like why so many of us left the church, it sometimes leaving, the hardest part of leaving is like leaving a community that you've established, but like you end up not being able to reconcile your new beliefs with the overarching beliefs of the community, and it causes too much stress for you. So like it's like we were all part of it and we are like, yeah, this is great. This is like a social club. And like, yeah, those beliefs are the backdrop for a lot of it, but it wasn't the most prominent of conversations. Because when you're around like-minded people, I think it's more prominent now. Like I do believe that at some degree, talking politics and shitting on the opposition party is like very, very common now. But I can honestly say, growing up in church, that you might have heard people talk about guns. Uh, you might have heard people talk about abortion, or I'm trying the gay agenda or something like that. But in church, it was like, "Hey, how are you? How's your week? Work sucks." It's the same old bullshit that I still talk about. It's a different ideological backdrop, but my point is that like a lot of these smaller churches, yeah, disagree with the ideology, but if you started taxing churches or tried to find a way to criminalize, not criminalize, but tax ideology based on how they tried to move people to vote for a certain candidate through propagating certain ideas, and focusing on the issues, those people are still like, the influence on those people aren't going, because those people aren't, they're not there because they go, I like this person, I want to learn from them. They're there because they go, I believe what this person says. And the second those people stop believing what that person says, if those pastors of those churches go, I've reconsidered my beliefs on whether or not it's a sin to be gay, all those people leave and they find a new place to go and believe the same exact things that they want to believe. People don't want to be confronted with different beliefs. They don't want to be challenged. So like that's what I think is another part of the conversation that often goes missing, is like, you're going to create, if you decided to find a way to do this, you're going to create a situation that results in a lot of angry and pissed off people who aren't going to change their ideology and are going to find a new way to create a community around that. And maybe that looks more like the Proud Boys or uh, Oath Keepers or some shit like that. I don't know.
Yeah, you can drive Andrew Tate off YouTube, but you can't drive Andrew Tate out of your 13
Tate.
year old.
Oh,
Oh, that's not where I thought that. Well, I guess I should have expected it.
I think, yeah, I feel like the knee jerk reaction to this from the evangelical community. It's funny to me when someone calls like one of the prominent people within the evangelical Twitterverse to the carpet on something that they've said, because they get really like snarky and crappy about churches, like we all do, but
of course.
somebody will call them to the carpet and say something about, I saw one of them the other day. A girl called her out. She was a black girl, and she was like, my church, wasn't that way. And, the black Christian church does a lot of good and this and that and the other. And like, that's something you have to consider too, is that like the same laws that you pass when you're considering, your typical, conservative right-wing church here in your hometown applies to, I'm struggling to remember her name, but the woman who runs Deconstructing Black or Deconstructing Color.
Yeah, it's oh my god.
I can't think of her name,
Oh,
but
we're all
we did an
blanking on it.
episode with her last year, and she talked a lot about her church, which she eventually left. But listening to her talk about her church it sounded pretty cool. I mean, like, really, like, ideologically didn't line up with where a lot of people want to be, and there's reasons to leave, but like the community support and stuff that her church was doing was impressive. I mean, and it was something that, like, passing these laws against conservative white churches also is going to hit decent Latino and black churches and things like that. I don't know, I feel like it's a lot of like lumping all churches in with the most hateable examples that we can all point out, whether it's mega churches or, you know, tiny fundamentalist militia groups.
Yeah, and let's be honest, progressive Christianity is expanding a lot, and there are still people who are trying to find faith communities that align with their new values. And you're at the end of the day, you're gonna get a lot of the same. We don't preach candidates; we just talk about values, and you're going to get that on the left, and they're going to talk about women's rights and bodily autonomy, and those do align with the left. So like you're going to face this issue on either side, and it's not that it's like well, the truth is in the middle, or there's like this middle ground, and oh well, free's buried. Like I'm not trying to pull the nuance out of it or say that there isn't right, wrong, or that you can't look philosophically into how you would come up with a more objective form of morality. But at the end of the day, you're trying to split hairs over $2.4 fucking billion, and it's not worth it when the U.S. government's bringing $3.8 trillion. It's stupid. It's stupid, and the cost is so much more. And I think there's one thing that I want to talk about that I didn't know that I think is cool, that apparently this is something that exists uniquely, specifically for religious organizations, for clergy, particularly, I believe.
Indulgences?
But no.
Oh.
You can, if you don't want to pay Social Security or Medicare because you are fundamentally opposed to it. And you have to have like it's often not granted, and you have to have a solid religious reason for like filing for a religious exemption for Social Security. And it has to be based on like you have to be exceptionally concerned, and it's kind of like, how like if you're a conscientious objector, like they're not just going to take your word for it because you don't want to go to war. They're going to talk to your family and look at your Facebook posts. And so I've been playing the long con. Look, I've been an conscientious objector for a long time, and all of that setup is literally just to avoid the draft. So we have to.
Sam, no offense, but like when it comes, if you get drafted, they're gonna put you. You're gonna be sweeping something. It's fine. They'll suss you out.
I will. Yeah.
You'll be frontline. I won't be because I can't pass the physical requirements.
Well, you got that LASIK, baby. So you're at least your eyes are good. You could be a sniper. You should be a sniper. I will go ahead and try to become a chaplain. I'll go for chaplain.
You could be an army psychologist or army counselor or something.
That's true.
Please don't kill yourself. That's all you do is just give them antidepressants and go, please don't kill yourself yet.
I know.
Dude, I feel like this system works for people who are that opposed to it, but I think like putting some consequences on it would make it better. So like if you are ideologically and religiously opposed to paying into Social Security or any of the other like public benefits or whatever, you should have to wear one of those Suicide Squad neck collars. And the minute your bank account hits $0, your head explodes.
You should have. What about that? Was it the first Saw movie? That thing that connected into their jaw and just like ripped their head open.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
As soon as you benefit from something that's publicly funded, it just goes off. Like you step onto a public road,
it starts beeping.
It's the libertarian dream.
I'm not even standing on it. It's like beep 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 beep.
Anyway, my whole point: you can choose to no longer participate in the Social Security or Medicare program, but it's an irrevocable decision. So if they buy that you truly don't believe in it, irrevocable. There's no take backsies, and these are often, when granted to like Amish communities, where they are absolutely not. So Amish, they are not paying into systems that they absolutely will not benefit from. And I think that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like to say we're going to live on our own and do it our own way. And if we will not take any, like when we get old, we will not reap the benefits of Social Security. You can just be like, I don't want it. And I also love that it's an irrevocable decision. Like, I think that's such a how many decisions in life are truly irrevocable? Do they give you control over something that big and say that like there's no
That
take back?
first tattoo, don't do it, kids. Don't do it.
I
Yeah,
really regret that like
I feel like
pelvic
we're on the
elephant
cusp of
not
like
working out.
a wave of GoFundMe's for Amish people who need surgery. Though, you know, like that's coming.
Dude, they
It is
set
cool though.
bones
Like
for
they don't
cash
need those
flow.
benefits. Like they have a community that provides those things to them, and when they get too old or too sick, they make them
They
jump
take
off of
him
a
out
big
back
rock,
and they
like
shoot him
in
in the head.
Midsummer. Yeah. Okay. Can I shift the subject like one more time before we go?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't
So
have
I
time limits on this. We do whatever the fuck we want.
That is true. Okay. Well, good. So I watched a little Vice report thing about how more and more churches are starting businesses to give themselves like a secondary revenue stream. And
Interesting.
I think like that's another one that the knee jerk reaction to be like, ew, gross, they're doing business. I kind of think it's great, honestly. And like the reasoning behind it from some of the people that I talked to was like, hey, church memberships dwindling in a lot of places. Offerings are going down over time. Like, if we want to keep serving the community or doing our good work or, you know, buying anti-abortion billboards, like we need money coming in and this is how we're going to do it. So they talked to a guy who had like started a church, he bought a Kmart that had closed down and then, segmented it off. And he's got like a number of different tenants in there. I think one was like a gym and there was a couple, like a restaurant, a couple of stores in there. And they're not like a part of the church where it's like, oh, we have a coffee shop in the lobby where you
Right.
can fellowship. It's the church has these separate businesses that they own that, provide revenue streams. And honestly, like that to me, that I think is actually way better. It's way better for you to go out and compete in the market and bring in money like a normal organization than to just like ring your congregation out every Sunday.
Yeah, I support that. I mean, especially like it's not like they're trying to. It would get weird if they were. So they're leasing space, or these are their actual businesses owned by the church.
This particular one was leasing space, but
Okay.
I mean, I think there's a bunch of different examples of, they have like a a private business that they own as well. Some churches do that, whether
So
it's
as
like
long as they're not.
maybe they have
Sorry.
like a paint, they also own like a landscaping company. And so it's kind of a separate entity, but it's all going into the same, umbrella corp or whatever.
Right.
And it
I
operates as a normal business.
And as long as they like when it comes to leasing space, they're functioning like a business and they're not going like say you wanted to open a queers only gym or an all queers gym.
I knew that's where we were headed.
And they're like, look, maybe it's like a dating space or like a date night kind of thing. You want to maybe that's your business model. And they're like
Like
people of
Curves,
all
but
walks of
for
life.
Luke Wilson.
Yeah. It's just like if they're going to be like, hey, no, we will not lease to you. It's like, well, now you're not a business anymore. You're back to being a church and you can go fuck yourself. I do feel pretty good about
So
it going
Sam
in
wants
that
to set
direction.
out the honeypot. He wants to be like, I
Now,
want them all to open bakeries.
exactly.
Only
That's
wedding
really my
cakes.
challenge. Now, I don't know that anyone's going to
Only
open
Cakes
an
does sound
all-queers
like a
gym,
great
but
name for a bakery.
I'm
I
pretty
would.
sure that's out there already. Nothing Bunt Cakes is definitely out there.
Oh God. But that's the challenge. That's the call to action. If churches get into business, I'm encouraging everyone who's part of the LGBTQ plus community to go out and try to start your business in those spaces and just overrun them.
Well, okay. So I was thinking about this as I was driving today, and I came up with, I think, 10 rules for a church
Dating your
running
teenage
a
daughter.
good business.
10.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
That's a
And
lot of rules.
I'll go
How
through
long were
these
you
quickly.
driving? How long were you driving?
I have 800 miles in this week, and I've got another 250 tomorrow, and then I'm driving to Michigan on Sunday.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you dictating these to your phone? Like, how's this setup go?
He's texting while driving. For sure.
Hope your baby's
I've
buckled
definitely
up.
I've definitely been in the car with him where he almost hits an oncoming car because he's sorting through YouTube videos.
That is not true. It wasn't even close.
If you weren't looking. Yeah, that's why. I'm like, oh shit, we grazed. No, I'm kidding. For the sorry, don't arrest Casey, everybody. Don't place him under citizen's arrest.
Okay.
I felt very safe while driving with him in his oversized truck on roads with no people on them that go completely straight for about 10 miles.
Yeah.
Wait, is Sam
longer than 10 miles?
Is Sam a average mid-sized truck hater?
No.
Probably. Okay. He's one of those dudes that would spit on SUVs in like 2006.
Okay, he's one of those guys that like nobody needs anything better than like a 94 Volvo.
Somebody keyed my H2.
We did make fun of you in college for your burnt orange fucking giant ass truck.
Mid-size, your regular mid-size Nissan Titan.
It wasn't mid-size. What did you drive in college?
Mid-size, a half ton.
It was like a Nissan Titan.
Yeah, it's mid-size. Full size would be like a Super Duty or something, Sam.
You're talking about, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, a Super Duty. Oh, yeah, exactly. I know.
See, I knew it. He's a big truck hater. He's a truck hater.
Oh, like a little bigger than that one. Okay, I get it. Oh, not a Tacoma? Okay, I get it.
You know what? I touched my truck nuts just for you when you came. So I didn't want to embarrass you.
No, I'm not a truck. I like, but small truck. I'm a small truck guy. I
can see that. You got big small truck energy.
Yeah.
I would probably prefer a small. If I was buying it, I would probably buy a small.
Well, for what you do, what actual? I know we're way off topic.
What does he
actual
do?
Truck stuff? Sales. He talks to people. Like other than the image of obviously, a man in your profession needs to be driving an F-150. You could do that profession just as well in a Impala, couldn't you? Like, are you actually hauling heavy?
I hauled an entire bed load of equipment.
Have you seen?
Could you do it in a Ford Maverick?
Not what I did today.
Okay. Have you seen Casey's dump truck? I mean, what?
I think so.
He's gonna haul ass to haul ass. You know what I mean?
I knocked some pickle jars off the shelf at the grocery store.
So anyway, the rules for a church running a successful business.
Okay, so yes, okay, so I'll go through these quick. But my thought was like, if a church was governed, if they governed themselves according to these rules, owning a business, I'm all for it, totally support it, think it's great. So first, obvious, conduct yourselves honorably and ethically. That's kind of a whatever, eggnog. Compensate your employees well, right? You should pay good if you're
market rates.
Unless they're volunteer employee, then it's fine because they're volunteering and they want to do it for the Lord.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to pay people to set up chairs every Sunday for 6 hours a Sunday. Yeah, if you're going to run a business and you're going to have employees, like you need to pay normal market rates. It should be a good thing to get a job for you, with you. Employee quality of life should be a priority. So you can't have people working 75-hour weeks and stuff like that. Like, it shouldn't be a fiasco for them to take a sick day or, do something with their family for a day.
It feels like Casey has never worked in ministry anywhere.
That's what I'm saying. That's the whole thing.
Congregant burnout.
They bring that energy to owning a business. Like, it's going to suck for everybody. Don't crush your competitors. Like, you're a business. You're doing business in the community, like operate like a normal business, but like you also have the resources of a big community group behind you. Like, you should not come in and just undercut every other local business in the community.
Which I don't have the exact numbers on it, and I'm sure we could Google it pretty quickly, but I'm fairly certain that somewhere close to 90% of church growth is just people coming to your new church from another church.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Considering that the church overall has been declining for a very long time, that's got to be the way it works. Yeah. Is any new, like, massively successful church is really just hoovering up a bunch of churches that don't have cool stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is so, Casey, I mean, by your logic and by your ethics, your code of ethics, no new churches can start ever because that's all
So
you're
does
I
going
don't
to
care
do.
if they crush other churches, just don't crush other like landscaping companies.
So does that mean that like they shouldn't from the pulpit like advertise their business? You know, they shouldn't be like there's only one of the holiest coffee shops in town.
Ah,
And are we
well,
getting to
that's
that?
rule number 10. You shouldn't market or monetize your faith. So don't have a Jesus fish on your sign. Don't like market yourself as a faith-based company. Don't tell your congregation that they really ought to do business with your thing because it's you and blah 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 blah. Like just be a business out in the market doing normal business stuff, please and thank you.
Well, what about Christian businesses that already exist? Like
I
definitely
hate
near
them.
me is like Christian. I think it's Christian Landscaping. I think there's a Christian landscaping company, and I drive by their trucks on my way home from work sometimes when I'm on the highway, and it's every time I'm like, oh my god, I would
No,
never hire
I'll
you.
I'll disagree with that a little bit. I see plenty of those cringy ones too, but I think to some people it is an important part of their identity, and it goes beyond just like kind of virtue signaling to other Christians because plenty of people do that. But I think to some people, to them, it's they're making a promise that I'm going to treat you, you know, like I believe so strongly in the quality of my business and the quality of our customer service that I'm willing to bank my faith on it as like I'm a representative of the Christian faith and I'm going to do a good job. I can respect
Yeah,
that to a degree. A lot of them are just virtue signaling.
I
All I'm
see
saying
it
is like
more
I
as
don't.
like
yeah.
honest Abe's, no frills, payday loans. That's what it comes
Yeah,
across to
I
me.
definitely see it as them trying to. I don't.
A lot of them are for sure. I'm
I
not
don't
trying to
think
defend them.
I agree with you to an extent, Jeremiah, where I think I think that is the mindset they're coming from. I just think they truly don't understand how bad of a marketing plan that is. Like people aren't like, oh yeah, oh those are the good ones. Okay, I'll trust them. Like it looks like you're using your faith to find a way to get into people's homes so you can give them quotes. It just isn't. I can't imagine most people thinking that that means you're going to like
It's you're a nice guy.
be a nice guy. I don't think
Yeah,
that most people
you're
would
a
see
nice
it that
guy.
way.
I've been cussed out by a few people, one in particular whose public image is very much like marketed as Christian, and I'm over him to say the least.
I want to we have a I think I still see this business around where I work and that they did change the name. I posted on my personal Instagram in 2018 of November 2018 and there was a landscaping company doing landscaping work near my business where I work. I clarified where I work because it's not my business. I just want to make that clear that I don't own my own business. Everybody knows that. Anyway, it's called guess. You can't. I'm going to tell you. Lynch Tree Landscaping.
Oh,
Mm, mm,
cool.
I do.
It has like a fun historical context.
Yeah, I have some
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. Well, I believe that the last name of the person who started it was Lynch.
You can
And
legally change your name. I'm just saying this for
yeah, you
anybody who like
should if
that's their
that's your last
justification.
name.
It's like, well, that's their name. It's like it doesn't have to be.
But your inability to realize that calling your business Lynch Tree Landscaping is really,
Yeah,
really
you didn't
awful.
have to say tree. It could have just been like the Lynch brothers or like what you know,
All around
John
bad.
or like John Lynch or something. Like you could make it clear that like this is my name. You can think the name's weird, but it's a name, not like swinging from a tree landscape. And you're like, oh, I wonder
Yeah.
what that's about.
They should have focus grouped that one a little bit.
Now,
Exactly.
I have seen the same logo around, and I know for a fact that they changed their name, and I'm guessing it's because of people like me who just kept taking pictures of their trailers and posting them on the internet. But anyway,
Anyway, Casey, what's rule number 4 or
yeah.
whatever?
Uh,
What's rule
you should
34?
reinvest into the community outside of your church. So,
Okay.
help raise money for other organizations, donate or do special work for comfort, for things that are not directly related to your church. You know, be invested in something other than just like putting money back in your own coffers.
Rather than just saying like, but that is the investment because the Great Commission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's got to be something that's not at all tied to the church in any like direct way.
Yeah, just be a part of the community, you know?
Build a wheelchair ramp for a school.
Right, right.
But do it to code, guys.
I
Don't
mean,
have the youth group do
preferably
that. Yeah, don't have the
It,
youth group do that
I
for
think
youth
you need
camp.
like 3 feet
build it
of
like a
ramp
half
per
pipe.
12-inch drop or something like that. You got to be careful with that.
Fair competitive pricing, which we kind of already touched on. Treat the community the same as your congregation. So, not as outsiders that get different pricing and stuff like that than the people in your congregation or anything like that. Um, here's a probably should have been number one, but separation of powers is an absolute must. I think that's
Mm.
part of the reason why you have so much trouble with some of these churches and stuff is that they grow and grow and grow, and there's still this like pastor acting as a CEO over all of these different entities. And that, like, I don't know, like a conflagration of power is just not good in any
These
way, shape, or
CEOs acting like they're CEOs, right?
Wow.
yes.
That, that's a Lizzo quote for all y'all Lizzo lovers out there.
Be transparent and welcome accountability, which
That's not gonna happen.
I know pipe dream stuff.
This
But
is
yeah,
like Casey writing his like
Yeah.
manifesto of honorable business here.
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to do those things, but they should.
Right. Casey's like, that's a standard that if you claim to be a Christian, you should hold yourself to. Fortunately, I'm free of such scruples.
That's the great thing about being adrift in the void.
There is no bottom.
Well, what? So are all of our overall opinions are just fucking deal with it the way it is?
Yeah, I think it's everyone agrees, or basically everyone agrees, that the behavior they're engaged in is wrong. But there's no way to effectively control that without hurting a bunch of people who didn't do anything wrong, and it still would be close to impossible to actually enforce in any meaningful way. It's
And the
part of the
cost
cost.
far outweighs the.
It's one of the cost of freedom things, and it's actually nice to talk about the cost of freedom that doesn't involve like dead school kids for once.
Jesus
But
Christ, yeah.
yeah, but like it's one of
No,
those costs of
for
freedom
real.
of like you're gonna just have to deal with these disgusting people. Like chalk them up to they're just more celebrities. Like if that helps you sleep any better at night, are they bilking people out of money? Sure, just like a bunch of music artists and other people
People
It's a,
are
are
like
getting what they pay for. They
right.
want
they're a
that.
bunch of Chet Hanks, you know?
Like and like many of you, I watched the John Oliver thing in like 2015 where he registers a church and how ridiculous it was, and now I laughed at it and all that stuff. Like it's really easy to dunk on it. It's very hard to fix it without undoing a lot of the things that we all take for granted or don't fully understand when it comes to actually protecting freedoms. But this is what protecting freedoms looks like. We don't like it and we think it should stick around because the alternative's worse for everybody.
I
Yeah.
believe I agree with all of what you just said.
What I will say, I agree with all of that. I think we have to save the Johnson Amendment, though.
Okay, can you once to end it, can you recap
You're just
really
obsessed
quick?
with Johnsons. It's weird.
Can you recap exactly the difference between like just you're a church, you can't do political stuff? What exactly does the Johnson Amendment say?
The Johnson Amendment, like, I mean, historically prevented pastors and organizations, and not just churches, but like all 501c3 nonprofits from directly endorsing political candidates and
Got it.
things like
Okay.
that, right? Which, like we said, hard to enforce. Cat's probably out of the bag on that one. But
includes
it,
financial. Oh, you're getting there. Sorry.
yes, it also prohibits financial contributions to political campaigns and stuff.
Yep.
Churches do not have to, provide public record and file their financial records and things like a business does. So if the Johnson Amendment goes away, these organizations, seedy people will be able to just funnel money through churches directly into political campaigns with no records, no public disclosure, nothing. It's nothing but bad for them to
Right.
get rid of the Johnson Amendment.
And for anybody who like is mad that their church can't speak up about political things or something because you think it's like an affront to your faith, just think about that. That's the alternative. It's not that you want something that's so evil and horrible. It's that there are people way more evil and horrible than you who will use you as their conduit to do much worse things. It's just reality.
It'll be a political money laundering scheme at that point. And the reality is like nobody's losing their tax exemption over, saying I command you to vote for Trump congregation. So do whatever you want there. It's gross. You shouldn't, but nobody's coming after you. So whatever. It might as well not exist, but the financial component of it has got to stay in place.
Yeah. And also, at some point, we don't want this to go away because we do have a dream of incorporating Growing Up Christian as a church at some point. So Casey wants to be a pastor. I really want to be a pastor. And that's kind of the easiest, fastest way into this. So
I'll be a pastor. We call ourselves the Trinity.
Hey, you're the assistant pastor. Shut the fuck up.
I just wanted to make the Trinity joke. No, I want to be the sound guy. That I like that.
He's the AV guy that we don't pay.
Hey, I got paid by the church I work for, okay?
Hey,
I need you to set up these chairs, and I need you to hold this dartboard while I practice.
I was paid to be the graphic. I was paid $28,000 a year to be the graphic designer, IT guy, video production guy, and I ran all the volunteer teams for all the sound and video teams. So definitely a full-time paid professional.
just a leech on the good institution,
And every single one of those was like an add-on after you just were hired to be the AV.
Oh, 100%. The first nonprofit I worked for, which was not a church, I became the IT guy just because I was like, I bet I could help with this. And they were like, guess what?
And you learned quickly you need to stop
the print designer. I had nothing to do with IT. I was the print designer, and I'm like Googling how to like debug a Microsoft Exchange email server, like scared out of my mind.
I hope nobody goes to hell because I don't know how to do this email thing.
I mean, after all the pastors got those gnarly porn viruses, they needed a discreet man as like yourself to figure out how to clear them all out.
No, there actually is a thing for that.
You signed that NDA.
The Ashley Madison leak happened. Do you remember Ashley Madison?
Oh, yeah.
I know people who their job was to comb through the leaked lists and look for like, do we have problems in here? No
way.
And they personally didn't care. It was just like that happened to be the thing they were tasked to do. Is like, well, the information's out there. It's normal Oppo research stuff of like we got to know what are people doing.
Like the holy Michael Cohen.
What a guy! Have you heard his podcast?
No.
He has a podcast where he just dumps. I only listened to like 2 episodes like a year ago, so don't quote me, but he just dumps on Trump the whole time and basically is trying to whitewash his image of like, yeah, I did bad things. Of course I did bad things. I'm here now. It's called Mea Culpa. That's literally the name of the podcast, but he's rebranded himself as like, but I'm here to pay for all those sins now by making money. Anyway, our sponsor today is FreshBooks.
I'm here to rectify what I did, and I'm brought to you by Green Chef.
Brought to you by Blackwater Coffee.
What a hateable person. I hate him.
There are worse podcasters. There are many worse podcasters for sure. There are many worse lawyers. Are there worse podcast lawyers? I don't know. He's got to be close to the top.
Well, I think we successfully solved yet another giant problem within Christianity.
But if you want to come debate us in the Discord, you should about this specific issue. This specific issue. If you think you have a compelling argument, because we only covered a few of them. It's not like we talked about all the different permutations of this. If you think you have a compelling argument we haven't thought of why churches should be taxed or even shouldn't, or you think you figured out the logistics of how to make it work, like pitch us. You know, like
OMG, So Emo is coming after you guys.
And while you're there, look at pictures of our pets that we all post.
Yeah.
Because I just got a motherfucking bearded dragon. So you guys can see that. He's a little baby guy.
Are pictures of there in there? I haven't looked.
Yeah. Wait, did I not post
You're like Cookie Monster pajama pants away from being Peoples of Walmart.
No, the last picture you posted in there, Sam, was just you with your dog being a puppy. Oh, look at him. He's so cute.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I
He's
had to scoop up my
70-pound dog,
dog
and
to
I'm
shove him.
holding
Oh no, I
cradling him.
see your bearded dragon picture.
Yeah, there
Never
it
mind.
is.
It was a while ago. Okay.
When you getting a bird,
No fucking.
Not
that
as
would
long as
be
you're
like
recording
complete
audio
white trash
podcast.
transformation.
Yeah, birds
Like,
are
you're
unless
ready
it's
for
a
a Missouri
falcon.
mailing address
I
if you
will-
get a bird.
Someone can help me figure out my way into falconry. I'll get a falcon. That doesn't even count. That doesn't count as being a bird person.
My family
You're
used to have,
badass.
my
You're
family
a
used to have
fucking
racing
badass.
pigeons. Racing pigeons are cool.
The
They're
Like
screech.
Mike Tyson?
Yeah, just like Mike Tyson. My dad was a veterinarian, and someone brought in an osprey once, and so this is the only time I've ever gotten to see an osprey from like 2 feet away because it was in a cage. That thing is like a little flying velociraptor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Its
So
claws
cool.
are this big, and you could tell it's just looking at you like, if this cage wasn't here, like I could kill you. And that just on its face, it just has that raptor confidence of like, oh yeah, you'll run. They all run.
Dude, the sound that screech that like birds of prey make, like the big ones, like I think it's a falcon that does that. But we have one that just like circles my area. And it's just like looking for
Oh,
rabbits
that's a little
and shit.
creepy. He's
And
just
it
warning you.
It makes that screech. Well, it makes me nervous when my cat gets out sometimes because I'm like, that guy will fuck up my cat pretty quick.
Did you guys know
But-
that bald eagle, when you hear a bald eagle screech, it's not actually a bald eagle? They use a different bird screech in movies because like bald eagles don't sound that cool.
Really? I
Oh,
probably
yeah,
sounds
'cause
like
they
the one
kinda
that I
have that,
keep
like,
hearing.
They have that sort of noise to them.
Yeah, I'm looking up what is it?
We need a drop.
The
Let's get that
red-tailed
bald
hawk.
eagle drop.
The
I-
red-tailed hawk is the actual bald eagle noise.
I
that
think
you hear most
that's
of the time.
okay. A hawk. I don't like. I thought it was a falcon. I don't know why I said falcon.
Why
But
are you-
no, falcon.
Why are you apologizing? Like, oh,
No.
it's not a falcon. You're an idiot, Sam. You're an
No,
idiot.
no.
It's a hawk.
But no, that's what's flying around my like neighborhood as a hawk, and they
Okay.
make a gnarly screech sound, and that's definitely what's used in movies, and it's cool. It's a badass sound.
When you think of them
Falcons
as
are
little,
subcompact hawks.
they tuck up. I like seeing the pictures of falcons when they like tuck into the dive position. Like they just seem cool. I feel like there's a good animated movie that could really work with that concept of like the
Dude.
little striker falcons.
I cannot remember which nature series it's on. It might have been one of the Planet Earths or something like that, but they're in England and they have the most spectacular footage of this. I want to say it's a falcon. It might be a hawk, a goshawk, I think is what it's called. But this thing is flying through the woods and literally like tucking its wings and stalling midair to like drop between tree branches and things like that. You could definitely look it up on YouTube, but you should check it out. It's like a speeder bike in Star Wars, and this thing is just cruising through the densest woodland area at like 50 miles an hour. It's amazing.
In 10 years, we're all gonna have birds of prey and like meet up with those giant arm length leather gloves. Come home with like rabbits and make rabbit stew.
Yeah, that's where Joel went wrong. He shouldn't have bought a football stadium. He should have bought an eagle.
Get into falconry like all the
Sanctuary.
cool guys.
I'm going to buy 3 eagles and then teach them to carry me. So yeah, join the Discord.
Yep.
You can find the link on our Instagram profile. And
I think I
definitely do
actually
that.
just have it say the link. It kept resetting. I think I just posted to message us if you want to join the Discord. I should probably just re-add the link. Hopefully it works right. I don't know. It kept resetting. It's supposed to like you can set a Discord link to be permanent or reset after every like 24 hours or something like that. And even though it was set to permanent, I kept getting messages from people saying it was resetting. So I'm also really bad at things. So it could just be that I fucked something up with Discord. Either way, message us for now. Eventually that link maybe might appear back in our bio.
Yep. And if you like the show, leave us a review wherever you listen to it. Hopefully a good review. But Spotify or Apple Podcasts, any of those would be great. Thanks to everybody who already has. And that being said, we will see you next time.